Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are discussing an issue that has been plaguing the game for quite some time, and it's only gotten worse over the years, and it's going to continue to get even worse as time goes on with the direction that wargaming is taking with a lot of the new content that we've been getting in the game over the past few years, and we are probably going to continue to get in the game as time moves forward. And what do I mean by that? Well, take a look at the ships that wargaming has introduced into the game over the past few years. They've really been pushing the envelope with like what a certain class can do or what a certain nation can do, like the Dutch ships, for example. The Dutch heavy cruisers and light cruisers, and, well, the Tromp, all, of course, have airstrikes. Airstrikes are, of course, a very powerful tool in their utility belt. And in the case of the Utrecht, it's probably actually a little bit broken, considering how good of a ship the Utrecht is, even without the airstrikes, right? But then you'll give that thing airstrikes on top of everything else, and now not only can you burn stuff down with your main battery guns, you can just bomb the living crap out of whatever is around you and your 13, 14 kilometer airstrike range. So yeah, that's the real fun ship to fight against. Then you have ships like, this started all the way back with the German destroyer splits with the Elbing line, right? Where you have what are actually really small light cruisers and a destroyer slot. And then you go even further back with like the large cruisers, back when ships like the Stalingrad and the Kronstadt were added in, and really it's like they're small battleships in cruiser spots, right? So that's wild. Then, of course, too, now you have hybrids getting added in at, an increasingly fast rate. So we have ships that are half surface ships and half CVs, basically fulfilling two roles at once, or in the case of like the Hildebrand, it's really just a CV with some gun strapped to it, right? So what do all of these ships do? Well, they make matchmaking really, really muddy. By that, I mean, we've had all these ships added to the game that, they don't really fit in the category that they're put in terms of like what was originally envisioned for that category back in the day when the game was originally developed and, when the Matchmaker was originally, created. They don't really fit that profile. Like the LB line's a really good example of this. They don't really do what destroyers do. Destroyers are meant to, go to caps, scout and spot for the friendly team, run area denial with either their racks of torpedoes or their presence by just being there, this, that, and the other. Things that ships like the Elbing don't really do. The Elbing's not really meant to, go and be super stealthy and spot and take caps. They're second line, if we're being generous, destroyers with, crazy AP that's really meant to, bully other cruisers and such, because again, they're really small light cruisers and not really destroyers. And back in the day, you had maybe like the Cabral that kind of fit into that category, but that was really it. And even though, Cabral is still a run and gun destroyer, you can still do things that destroyers do, like spot by, just shooting at friggin' everything that moves and subsequently having everything return fire to it because, good luck hitting a good Cabral player, right? So, you can still kind of do things like that with the Cabral, but as we've moved forward, we're getting ships that are more in the Elbing's line, like with the new U.S. destroyer split. These are, again, another line of second line destroyers, if you will, that are, kind of small light cruisers that, to play way back behind the other destroyers. They aren't really meant to go to the cap and cat contest or anything like that, so forth and so on. And that's just talking about destroyers. Cruisers, we got like the Marseille line that, they're really more of battle cruisers than cruisers, but they're still, the cruiser category, right? And you keep looking at like the other lines and such where more ships like these have been added in. We've had more of these hybrid ships that, aren't like the hybrids, with the flight deck welded to them, but hybrids in terms of they kind of really blur what class they really belong to. We've had more and more of those ships get added to the game, and Matchmaker has not been changed nary once to compensate for that. Like, how many times have you guys gotten into a match and for some reason the enemy team has like 4 Dutch ships on their side? Maybe they have some Golden Luz or some Utrechts, or there's like a Tromp or whatever. There's some combination of that on the enemy side. They're not in a division or anything. They're just out and about by themselves, and they've got all that on their side. Maybe they even have something like a Louisiana or two, the American hybrid battleships. They got one of those on their side as well. And of course, they have a CV. Then on your side, you just have the CV. So now their team has a huge tactical advantage because they have, not only the CV, they've got a hybrid battleship or some type of a hybrid ship, the Dutch ships with all the airstrikes, and those planes don't run out, right? You just wait for the armament to reload and you have more planes ready to go, right? So they get all of that oppressive plane ability on their side of the match, while you don't get that. You don't have, a bunch of Utrechts or Golden Lus or Troms or hybrid ships on your side. You may not have anything, again, outside of the CV. That is completely possible. We've all been there. Because Matchmaker does not take any of that into consideration when it's looking at the teams. All it's taking into consideration is the class of ship that you're in and the tier of ship that you're in. That's all it cares about when it's putting a team together. It doesn't look at radar. It doesn't look at, is this a hybrid ship or is this a standard ship? Is this a ship that, like the Elbing or the Khabarovsk or the U.S. destroyer split, to where they're kind of an in-between class? It does not look at any of that. And it really, really needs to, with what Wargaming's been doing here recently. Like, we have a hybrid Yamato-class battleship in the works, right? Hybrids, unfortunately, aren't going anywhere. We just got the French Hildebrand not that long ago either, and here we are already getting another one added to the game. And we're also getting the Surcouf added in, a submarine with a literal 8-inch turret mounted to its deck. These are the problems that really need to be addressed with matchmaking going forward. I know, a lot of the talking points around matchmaking just revolve around usually up-tiering. Yes, up-tiering sucks, but like it or not, it was designed with that in mind from the get-go. Up-tiering is always meant to be a thing. In all of these tiered vehicular combat games, up-tiering is unfortunately a thing. In World of Tanks and War Thunder, and it's just how the games work, right? And at least they did actually adjust that not that long ago. Now, if you've been up to, I think if you get been up tiered for 3 out of your 5 past games, that percentage of games, you're supposed to kind of be tossed a bone and be put in, a special little bracket by yourself to where you'll get a game where you're either only up tiered by one tier or it's a game at your tier, right? They at least adjusted that a little while ago to be more favorable and more generous to those of us that have been on that, that 5 or 6 game up-tiering streak, right? They have not touched anything in regards to looking at more than just the tier and the class of ship. And I understand that short matchmaking times are very important to wargaming because people have the attention span of a fruit fly right now, right? Again, if you're an older person, go look at what's popular on TikTok or whatever. What gets millions and billions of views on TikTok, it will actually break your brain. The numbers 6 and 7 are a joke now, by the way. I don't know what it is. My millennial brain is apparently too old. My frontal lobe is too well developed to understand why 6-7 is a joke now. I don't know, right? So that's important to wargaming. I get that, but the quality of matches, there has to be some give, because my God, if you haven't played the game recently, which I'm sure most of you watching have, a lot of you have been saying, I haven't played the game in 3 or 4 years, but I'm back for the 10th anniversary. You know what it's like right now. It is rough with the matches. And sure, I think a fair amount of that is players that haven't been around for 3 or 2 years. They're coming back. There's new mechanics, new ships they don't understand in the game. That is most certainly a pretty sizable chunk of it for sure. But again, when you have games where one side is just stacked with even the age-old, thing, radar. One side gets all the radar. That's been a thing for forever in this game. Why is that still a thing? It can't be that hard to add a tag to a ship saying, hey, this is a radar ship. Hey, Matchmaker, try to make sure these are distributed equally amongst both sides. Or this is a ship with airstrikes. Make sure these ships are distributed equally amongst both sides as much as possible. It can't possibly be that hard, and it can't possibly add that much more time to Matchmaker to just give us a little bit of a better chance at having matches that aren't complete one-sided blowouts like they are so much nowadays. Like I was talking yesterday's video talking about Kremlin. It was so rare and so nice to have a game where there weren't any subs, weren't any CVs, and there was only one ship with airstrikes in that match. And it was a beautiful game. It was a great game. It went on for way longer than any other game I've had recently. It was way closer than any other match that I've had recently, and it was so enjoyable, right? But of course, the issue is wargaming is fully in this hybrid gimmicky ship mindset right now. And for the time being, thankfully there are more ships that are quote-unquote normal compared to, these new super gimmicky ships like the Valparaiso, the Sibir, and things like the Utrecht with the airstrikes and such. There's still more normal ships in matchmaking at this time. But, what's going to happen, a year or two down the road when we're getting ships like, again, the Surkuf, the Aki, the hybrid Yamato and such, when those ships are starting to become more and more normal in game. I mean, we talked about this not that long ago. I think it was like a little over a year and change ago, and that was I think when the American battleship split was added in. And again, you had those games where like one side had 3 Louisianas that were not in a division on their team. Other side didn't have that. It's like you couldn't give the other side 1 Louisiana, I think that's what spurred on this conversation, a year and change ago. And here we are again with matches that seem to be like, worse than ever at this moment in terms of quality. Yeah, I'm in queue for like a second, but when the match lasts 4 minutes because one side just absolutely curb stomps the other side because the ships aren't distributed equally, that's a problem. And it's a problem that isn't going to go away anytime soon because, they're not going to stop introducing these ships into the game. And I know Wargaming's typical response to when this is brought up on like the Discord or the forums back in the day is that, while yes, these ships have these attributes and such, supposedly they're balanced in other ways. Which, sure, some of them, yeah, but like, again, the Utrecht, you take away the airstrikes, it's still easily one of the best tier 10 light cruisers in the game, just because of how good the ship itself is. And she's not alone in that category either. There's plenty of ships that, yeah, they got this gimmick, but even if they didn't have this gimmick, they're still really freaking strong and really good ships. So that is a problem and an issue that's going to persist for years to come, for the rest of the game's life. I've been seeing these comments pop up now. I mean, like, of course, everyone loves to complain about Matchmaker, right? But it seems to, of course, really be at the front right now because of, again, the quality of matches at the moment. So while, yeah, up-tiering sucks, this is the real problem with Matchmaker that I really think needs to be addressed before Wargaming keeps shoving in these crazier and crazier ships into the game. So that's my 2 cents on the subject. Just nice little rant about that for today's video. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Do you think some type of system like that should be implemented or what? Let me know what you guys think down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.